Hey YouTube, I just wanted to make a video on the Mercenary I've been using for the latest Path of Exile League. I think it turned out pretty well, and a lot of the stuff we thought that Mercs could do as far as like what items they could equip, how they sort of get impacted by your player, and how tanky they were, etc. I think people have a lot bigger grasp on it now that it's been a week. I didn't have a chance to play during league launch. I was out of town, but turns out that was pretty good because apparently the servers were really bad. As always, whenever we have like issues with the servers, I do recommend sort of just set your server to a different one. The East Coast one usually explodes, so Texas generally will has been fine, at least for me, from like the login screen. But that's just my little tip there. Anyways, so this is going to be from the perspective of a like a melee bleed build. When I was thinking of what build I wanted to play for the league, I knew I wanted to use Perkle's Toe because obviously that's just sort of lucky damage. Having played some lightning builds in the past, when we had that mastery that like made your non-crits lucky or something like that, it was like whoa. So I definitely wanted to sort of abuse this, and I had played tons of lightning builds before. Obviously, Doryani. I was like, listen, everyone's gonna do this. It's gonna be hella expensive. I just didn't want to do it, and I didn't know how tanky they were gonna be. Turns out they're like super tanky. Even they've been trying to like nerf it, I think yesterday, but the Doryani mercs are crazy. So whatever. Um, I haven't played Bleed in a long time, so and I feel like I wanted to play more of a bossing build, so like glad you get the lucky spell block, right? So my block is, I mean, it won't even show here, but this, and then you put it to lucky. This is like 90-87 essentially. And I knew mercs were going to be sort of like super strong in the map, so you wanted to be both tanky and do a ton of single target damage. So the clear on the build isn't great, because last rate's AoE is kind of terrible. But luckily, the Merc sort of clears up a little bit of it, and then I just sort of stacked a bunch of explodes to make mapping feel better. So that's been pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with my choice as far as a build. But notably, there's a bunch of different stuff you can do for elemental builds. Not even just like the Doryani's Lightning, but like for Helm and like other stuff. There's um, different things and like different curses, anything that's reducing resistances and stuff like that. So I'm not really going to be touching on any of that, just because I mean I've looked into it, but I don't like I wouldn't be using it for my character, so I don't think it's sort of like relevant to what I'm using. Um, but yeah, so let me just get right into it. I guess so. Perkle's Toe, obviously, the big thing here is I went for the obviously this is just like a max roll, but I went for the increased move speed as the max roll, just having the Merc keep up with you so that the ores get constantly applied. Um, Super strong, and Perkle's Toe is like a little. The AOE on this is a little shorter than like traditional auras, so you do want them to try and stay close to you. And I guess going on that, what I chose as my Merc was the Blade. I would say Blade Biter, but it looks like Blade Bitter, as opposed to the Toxicologist. Um, the Toxicologist is really cool for. Uh, I don't know what that was. I thought it was from Thirst of Blood for Jack the Axe, but I didn't. I disabled it. I don't know if it's just when you have it equipped. Like I turned the aura off, so he specifically wouldn't do that during the video, but
Yes.
whatever. Um, but so I went with the Blade Bitter because I wanted a Merc that could use Malevolence and Grace. I haven't found one with Grace yet, but so they can roll Malevolence, Grace, and luckily there's some synergy with like Abyssal Cry and stuff. But I tried the Toxologist first because there is some synergies as far as like being able to use Chill increase damage, like Chill increasing damage effect or damage taken via like there's a unit quiver and a bow and stuff. But what I actually found when playing with it was that because it was a ranged character and I'm trying to be melee, I was running out of the Perkle's Toa and the other wars like all the time, and they were just sort of sitting back and shooting things, which isn't really what I wanted for my Merc, especially if I'm going to do like nearby stuff. It just didn't really work, even though on paper it seems like it's fine. In practice, outside of like bossing, it wasn't really doing anything. Although that's a good idea. I could actually, because you get 3 Mercs, I could hire a second one and just have it specifically for bossing. That might be a good idea. Um, but so I went with the blade bitter. So he does like poison melee damage, malevolence, and he can also roll grace. So trying to find one with that. And I think the auras and the movement abilities, I'm pretty sure they're like mutually exclusive, and you can only have two. Because I'd love to have malevolence, grace, and one with whirling blades, but I don't think you can roll that. Um, yeah, but he also comes with Abyssal Cry, which is great because we can use Warcry synergies, and Abyssal Cry is pretty cool because it's mostly focused on like debuffing enemies as opposed to sort of buffing with charges. Um, and when you, uh, Abyssal Cry basically it gives an AoE hinder, and then when they die, they do damage, chaos damage equal to their max health is like an explosion. And then Pestilence Strike also does the same thing. When they die, they do like little chaos, you know, dot around them when they die. And the rest is just sort of like, Cobra Lash hitting everything, Viper Strike hitting everything, blah blah blah. So that's what I went with as far as this mark. I did initially want to use Son of the Sin Eater so that I wouldn't have to roll any sort of like avoidance elemental ailment stuff on my gear, but this can only be used by mercs. I think it's just the like strength int holy guy, because you can't actually
What do
change
you
the
need?
merc's weapons. So I can't even swap this out for a shield. It has to be dual claws, and I think that's set based on the type of merc rather than like the skills they have. So like all of the blade bitters are going to be dual claws, etc. So that was kind of unfortunate. So it sort of limits your options, but I'm pretty happy with the two weapons I'm running for this. So he's running Replica Lure, which get enemies taunted by you, and so Warcry taunts. So whenever he taunts, those enemies take 10% increased damage, and that's from all sources. So it's just essentially just like a 10% more damage multiplier, and it's a pretty decent claw itself as far as like base damage and stuff. So it helps them do like a little damage to like clean up the rest of the mobs. Aldi is the other one. I just have a silly corrupt on it because I was doing like seeing if crit chance stuff would work with gifts from above. The answer is not really. You need like far more crit chance on your gear. You get it occasionally, and you definitely get it on the bosses, but eh. Um, but what this does, it gives you, I think Warcry buff effect. I don't know if it works on Abyssal Cry, but regardless, it essentially just makes it so enemies taunted by your War Cries. So Abyssal Cry, you have another explosion, dealing 8% of their max life is chaos damage. So that the explosion stack, and then I'm running Bleed Explosion myself, so it helps a lot sort of clear the room. And those are the two claws. This is in the offhand, even though I think they alternate just because this is the far lower level claw. It's basically just a stat stack. Cast, obviously, just 50% increased damage. Um, Decent enough. If I needed survivability, I would actually be looking into Vol's Vision. The downside of this is you can't run anything corrupt, but it's a pretty sizable amount of max life and regen. And the problem is this is a strength int base, so you can't actually run it on a dex int. So Learcast, there's I think one more. Um, it's like Yvelth's Trickery or something that like when you're hit, if you drop shot ground and you curse enemies with like random curses, but there's not really that many curses that are good for this build other than like vulnerability, temp chains, and enfeeble. I guess punishment too, but it relies on the merc getting hit, and this is just up all the time, so it's like whatever. Even if it's only 50 increased as opposed to 50 more, it's fine. Um, and it's got life on it, so whatever. Doppelganger guys. So this is probably the tankiest, or at least the second tankiest item you can give your merc as far as like a chest piece. So it gives you the unhinged skill, which sort of rotates you between sane and unsane. But any of the merc items that actually give a skill, the mercs won't use them. So it only works for like annoyance and stuff that just like the body armor that gives you a keystone, like stuff like that, where it's just like it happens. That'll apply, but they won't actively use any skills other than the skills they have here. So this means that you default to sane. So similar to the Guardian tech that minion builds use, essentially you're always sane. So you're always going to be taking 30 to 40% less physical and chaos damage, which is crazy because it's just a less modifier, and you're going to restore 10% of your life whenever you get hit. So huge for survivability. I should probably quality this up just for a little more evasion and energy seal, but um, yeah, so this is the best, and I think the second best, which again is a strength base, even though it's straight energy shield for some reason. Garb of the Ephemeral. This is a couple divines right now. I'm not sure what the best in pluses would be, but the main thing is the divinity charges, making you divine, um, which just makes you take less damage and become immune to curses, and your nearby allies, so that'd be like you can't be modified below base value, uh, and can't deal crits. So this is the big thing here. Like nearby enemies can't deal crits is pretty crazy because it affects both the Merc and you. And then the action scene is just sort of like nice. So this is probably the best one, which is why it's a couple divines. But because it has a strength requirement, despite not having any armor, you can actually equip it on a Dex Int Merc. So if you're looking for a pure survivability standpoint, I think Doppelganger Guise is the best. You can also run whatever that the crappy ES thing that like I think Zathras' Cassock that drops Conk Ground when you block because you do have dual wielding, so you have 50% chance to block, but that just seems terrible. So I just have the chest as like the one big defensive, and then everything else is sort of like utility. Yeah, and then Belted Deceiver. Nearby enemies are intimidated, which again is why you want sort of more of a melee style merc as opposed to ranger. And it has pretty good, resist, reduced damage from critical strikes, some life on it. Pretty good belt. And it's a lot. The other thing I would be considering as a belt is Combs Binding, because it gives both you and your merc essentially 25% like less physical damage. Problem is, again, I mean, you can wear this because of strength, because apparently the only like the quote unquote equipment, so like helm, chest, gloves, and boots are affected by like the merc type. Any accessories you could just wear. The problem with Cone's binding, as good as it is I would have to find another source of intimidate, which you can get through like Eldritch Implicits on gloves, other stuff. Some of like the merc skills have it, although I don't think this merc gets any that intimidate. So, but it's fine for now. I haven't needed personally the physical damage reduction yet. If I do, I could maybe look into making changes, or like if it's a tanky map, maybe just like swap them out. But getting your resists where you can on the unique gear is really good in my opinion. Um, and then we have Doiju's Damning, so it works similar to Animate Guardian in that if you want to have them apply a curse and then you're also applying a curse, you need to have one of you has to have a +1 curse somewhere. So Doju's damage is pretty good because again it has the elemental resistances on it. If you want to do more curses, do I have it? Yeah. So Anathema, it sets your curse limit equal to your maximum power charges, which is 3 by default. So this gives you essentially you can have your merc apply 2 curses, and then you can still apply one yourself. You can also increase this with if you can increase the merc's maximum power charges with whatever. But I was actually looking through. See if I have it here. Yeah, the like what curses I could potentially get on corrupted Asenaths. And it'd really just be enfeeble because if I use vulnerability, these are all level 1. If I use vulnerability, I'm losing like 30% damage, which sucks. Despair doesn't do anything. Elder Weakness doesn't do anything. So level 1 enfeeble is like 10%. I think it's like 9% reduced damage on bosses, 15% on everything else. So better than nothing. But I don't know. I'd have to swap out Doju's Damning for essentially. I think Anathema basically just doesn't have any text on it, right? Um, it just has like a little int and yes, that's it. But maybe it's going to depend on like how tanky I feel like I need to have the merc. Like, does the LE resist matter at the end of the day? And do I really need the 9% less taken damage? But it's better than nothing, but I'm not even sure if I want to keep this sort of like this Asenos thing. But so let me just go into that. So Asenos Gentle Touch, I just got the cheapest one. The spell crit corrupt doesn't matter. Basically, it gives you temp chains on hit and non-aura curses. So essentially anything you do on hit doesn't get removed from dying enemies, and the corpses still are affected by the corpses. It also gives you another for explosion, but it has to be enemies sort of near corpses affected by your curses. And this one does physical damage instead of chaos damage. But the combo here, essentially, that I know Crypt made a video about, is Astanos Gentle Touch, these sort of corpse curses, and the Coiling Whisper gives you Soul Eater on your Merc, so it actually starts doing like a sizable amount of damage. The one issue is it says targets aren't unaffected by your hexes, so they can still be hexed. So I'm pretty sure this is like disabling temp chains, which is fine. I mean, I'd like to have temp chains, but um, I the soul eater on the Merc I think is a little more valuable, at least for now. We'll see when my gear is better, maybe it'll just be temp chains. Um, but because of the corpses essentially and like anything you kill continues to be affected by the curse, this like procs all the time. So you basically just have soul eater. The one thing I'm not sure if it works or not is last rites destroying cursed enemies. So it might not work as far as like the whole corpse thing. I know it definitely works as far as the soul eater aspect, where like you'll still generate the souls as they die, because the duration like doesn't expire. However, none of the like the explode thing and sort of like the AOE corpse stuff doesn't really work. I think with the last rites is how it works. So I may be looking into sort of anointing something different. Um, and then obviously the end game would be like anoint Perkle's toe, and then probably like malevolence, increased aura effect. You can get additional curse here too, but it's like I mean, these are both pretty rare, but the Malevolence is probably going to be less expensive than a +1 curse Perkle's Toe, I'd imagine. You can also get just like, flat resistance or move speed, or probably like the other two. And then you could just use like a tainted oil to anoint whatever. But yeah, essentially this just says like Soul Eater. Um, and because I think this disables the temp chains, and this has a good chunk of chaos resistance on it too, which is nice. Um, but that just helps them sort of clear. And Yeller cast. And the last thing is just these are okay. They do, especially for the mercs when you fight them, they tend to stand still a lot. So you will get like the grasping vines on them, um, which is good because it slows them down a lot. However, I'm thinking maybe these boots would be better off just as like a tankier, like a rare, um, maybe with like a drop chill ground when you walk or something, um, and just be able to sort of cap the resistances between everything else. Because aggressive vines essentially, it don't the taking reduced extra damage from crits is only for the merc, not for me, so I don't really care about it. Um, and all damage inflicting poison, he has a decent enough poison chance, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm think probably replace these with like a chilled ground, um, boots or something. But yeah, so that's been that. And uh, anything else? Oh, I guess like upgrades. No, I think I talked about all of these. Yeah, cones binding. I just have to have a different source. Yeah, I was looking into bonus curses, but yep. That's probably it. I think it'd probably be a good idea now that I'm thinking about it again to sort of have a bossing toxologist, specifically because like boss arenas are small enough that it would pretty much always be applying to you. It wouldn't get like stuck behind. Um, and the sort of chill tech is probably a lot stronger on bosses. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do for like a second Merc, so I can swap them out. But this is really good between the explosions and other stuff for mapping. I do think I'm probably going to get rid of last rites just because I'm denying myself one explosion and um, temp chains. I might even get rid of. Well, I'm gonna hold on to Soul Eater for a while until I like at least replace Jack the Axe and get more like actual gear. Um, but yeah, I hope this was helpful at all. I'm gonna link the what is it? There's some. It doesn't have all the items. It just has like a good chunk of items. There's like a Google Doc going around that, or a Google Sheet, I guess, that has like a ton of items for each slot that you can use. There are more, um, but that's the fun. Is sort of like finding the tech that no one else has. So like the items are still like 1C, or you can get like double corrupts and stuff for like 10C. But yeah, hopefully someone found this helpful. I just sort of wanted to make it because I haven't seen a lot of builds as far as like what you should put on your Merc other than like Doryani slop on YouTube. So I figured someone might find this helpful. So yeah.